I wrote my letter to myself for when I was 12 years old. I wish I could go back in time to when I was 12 years old and tell myself the things I know now. You see, back then, I felt such shame, guilt, confusion, and fear. I remember learning the same lessons that are taught to all young boys, right? That boys are strong, boys are tough, boys are protectors, and boys don't cry. But when I looked in the mirror each day, that's not what I saw, and that's certainly not what I felt. I wish I could go back in time and tell myself that what happened wasn't my fault. If only I could remind myself that I was just a child and I didn't deserve any of the trauma that I was enduring. If only I could tell myself that I wasn't alone, that like me, 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused before the age of 18. I wish I could go back in time and erase the terrible messages swirling around in my head. For years, I believed that because I didn't put up a fight or tell anyone, that I was to blame. I believed that because my body reacted and felt some form of pleasure, that I must have liked what was happening. I thought because I was a boy and my abuser was a woman, that no one would believe me if I came forward. That people would say, as a man, I should have been strong enough to protect myself. Or that I shouldn't be complaining in the first place, because any sex for guys is good sex after all. I was convinced if people knew what happened, that no one would want to be my friend, no woman would want to marry me in the future, and my parents would forever be ashamed of me. That I would be considered damaged goods for the rest of my life. And so for the next 12 years, I did what as a boy I was programmed to do. I told myself it was time to man up and began the process of burying my pain, suppressing my emotion, and running away from all connection and vulnerability. I wish I could go back and tell myself that trying to man up will only make things worse. That as a consequence of being so tough and stoic, I will struggle with anxiety and low self-worth for a decade. That as a result of keeping all the hurt inside, I will suffer from high blood pressure, heart palpitations, and stomach ulcers as a teenager. And that in trying to be man enough, I will forfeit my ability to be the best son, friend, or partner I could be. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but looking back, it's clear to see how rigid gender norms hurt my health and relationships. After everything happened, I immediately stopped hanging out with my real friends, and I tried so hard to fit in with the popular kids in order to shield my insecurities. I displaced the anger, the rage towards my abuser onto my mother, hurting that relationship for years to come. I became jealous and frustrated at my partner, who I love more than anything, anytime she wanted to be with her friends instead of me, which she didn't deserve. And I shied away from friendships with other men as I was determined to go through this alone. I wish I could go back in time to when I was 12 years old and tell myself the things that I know now. That one day I will find healing. I will find liberation by breaking free from those harmful gender norms that held me back all those years. That one day I will marry the most amazing person whose love and support will help shatter the shame I carry. And that one day I will dedicate my career to supporting survivors, modeling vulnerability, and promoting authentic, respectful, and healthy manhood. So, to all the men and boys out there who are suffering in silence, please know you're not alone. You didn't deserve to be treated that way, and you don't have to keep the pain locked away inside. We are the authors of our story, and the previous chapters of our lives do not define us. Owning our story and embracing vulnerability can be scary, trust me, I know, but we deserve to be happy, to be healthy, to be connected. And in the wise words of Brené Brown, only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light.
My name is Bob. I started working with Champions of Healthy Manhood about 1 year ago. In my second meeting, there was a person that talked about how great his father was. I was never comfortable to talk about my childhood, never told anybody, including my wife. This group made me feel comfortable. I started talking about my father, and he had no affection, love, care for me. Relationship was zero. He treated my mother like a slave. I would go to bed at night and put a pillow over my head because he was yelling at her all night. After talking about it to this group, I felt very, very comfortable. I married my wife at the age of 19. My father said without going to college I was going to be a loser. Not really knowing what a father should be like, many days I was not at the home. Many days I set my goal on my job career versus family to prove my father was wrong. I spent many days traveling on my job. I went to Europe 68 times, Korea 30, China 20, Thailand 20. Considering the time on planes, airports, and away from home, I was gone away from home for 6 years. This left a lot of responsibility on my wife. And I have one daughter, 2 sons. The daughter turned out very good. My 2 sons I spoiled. My wife would discipline them and I would reward them. Now understanding what a father and husband should be like, I know I need to make a lot of changes in my life, and I'm looking so forward to it so I can treat my family like they should be treated. I'm very happy I joined this group, and I wish I could have joined many, many years ago.
My name is Brandon Melnick, and I am here to read a letter to my younger self. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. That's a quote from Brené Brown. Dear Brandon, this is you, but in the future. It's weird, huh? Embrace the weird, the crazy, the uncomfortable, and the unknown. You will learn many valuable life lessons, and I'd like to share with you that it does get better. You will turn out just the way you were meant. I hope that you know that you have an incredible amount of strength. I hope that you know that you have an enormous amount of courage. I hope that you know you will find your soulmate, and he will love you even when you feel unworthy. I hope that you know that you are an incredibly reflective human being. I hope that you recognize that your big ears are there for you to listen to everyone so that you can show how deeply you care. I hope that you know you will quickly develop a thick skin. I hope that you know you have so much to offer, and much of what you have to offer will come from the cruelty that the world will show you over and over again. The world will call you names to denigrate you. The world will bully you to feel better about themselves. The world will literally and figuratively beat you. These demons are nothing compared to the internal struggles you will face. Many, many times you will believe the world is a better place without you. Many, many times you will act on these thoughts. You will believe all of these false stories about you because you haven't yet discovered your own self-worth. You will believe them because you don't yet understand hurt people will hurt people. You will believe them because you inherently see the good in people, even though you're scarred deeply on every level. You will eventually learn to turn these haters into motivators. You will believe them because you're not yet living your truth. You will open up and begin writing your story. You will discover your truths. You will live honestly and live authentically. You will discover that in order to accomplish the changes you want to see, that you first need to prioritize yourself. Not in a selfish way, but in an ongoing, selfless act of humility and selflessness. You will recognize that your support system is unrivaled and that these people will go to the ends of the world to ensure that you are safe, ensuring that you are valued, ensuring that you are appreciated, ensuring that you are loved, ensuring that you are respected, ensuring that you are validated, all just as you are. Love these people unconditionally. You will recognize and learn to appreciate the value that language has. You will learn that recognizing people's identities is about dignity and respect. Along the way, you will take calculated and healthy risks and do things you didn't think that you can do. The process of undefining unhealthy masculinity, unlearning the healthy traits, redefining healthy masculinity, and learning healthy traits is an ongoing process you will gladly and often unknowingly be right in the middle of. A huge part of this is because you realize that in order to make any type of change, the first step is to look internally. Once you realize that you have everything that you need, and you need everything that you have, you will begin to make the changes you set out to make. Always stay true to yourself. Always stand for what you believe in. Always share what you have to offer. The world will learn to love you just as you are. Love always, Brandon Peter Melnick.
This is a letter that I've written to my son. As cliche as this may sound, my heart burst with love and admiration the moment I laid my eyes upon you. It was like nothing I ever experienced before, and was only repeated when I saw your sister for the first time a couple years later. I cried. Tears of joy and a million other emotions swept over me. You were so perfect, and at the most innocent stage of life. You were ours to take home and care for, and help shape you into the person that you would become, the man you would become. Of course, every parent hopes that they do right in raising their children, however they decide to go about parenthood. Your mother and I talked at length about a question that neither of us could answer easily. It seems like everyone should have a simple answer to this question, but it escaped us. How do we raise a good person? How do we raise a good man? This sent me down a path that I was unknowingly already on. I had just not found the next step to take on the journey. I began asking myself, what makes a good man? The answer again was not as simple as it seems to be. Society will tell you that a good man is strong, courageous, does not express emotion, does not need help, is a protector of his property and loved ones. These are things that made up part of the man I have become. It was not until I began to question some of these traditions of societal masculinity that I realized these attributes didn't fit who I was or who I thought a good man was. Not that all these things are bad attributes to possess, but to only live within this limited scope of emotional spectrum is harmful to not just you as a man, but to the people around you as well. I'm not here to tell you that I'm going to stop you from being enveloped by societal manhood. I know that that is near impossibility. I'm already seeing it take its hold, and you are only 4. There are too many factors that play into this for me to have any control over. But maybe, just maybe, I can show you the things that I admire in the men that stand out to me as good men. I can give you the tools to face life with an openness it took me 3 decades to fully discover. I can show you that it's okay to express emotions. It's okay to cry. It's normal to be fearful of things. It's okay to talk about these things with other men. It's okay to be vulnerable. If I can show you how valuable these things are to living a full life, then maybe you will be living a full life far sooner than I started to. My hope for you when you go out into the world on your own is for you to see masculinity as it should be, and not the masked version society has showed you. Hopefully I can give you at least a glimpse of what that is. That strength and courage is not found on the athletic field or with physical dominance, but in the man that can cry at funeral of a loved one. I want to show you that a man can seek help from a friend or a professional when he needs it, in mind, body, and soul. I want to show you that real deep connection and friendship can be sought after and developed among 2 men. I want to show you that gender and sexuality should never be used to bring someone down. Again, I want the world for you, but also for you to know truly what a good man is. I'm not sure when you'll be reading this or fully understand what I'm trying to achieve in raising you. Maybe you read this halfway to adulthood at 10 and write it off as a silly thing Dad wrote. Then you may revisit it in your later teens and roll your eyes at my words. Maybe you'll read this in your 20s and realize that the last 2 times you read this, you were already on the journey to becoming the man you have become. Hopefully you will smile and know that you are a good man. Love, Dad.
I have a question for the men and boys in our community. Do you know what it means to be a man? I think we have been sold a bad bill of goods. It's something that has been drilled into us, into most of us, over and over since we were born. This isn't a new issue either. Our fathers and our fathers' fathers have also had this drilled into them. It is diminishing our quality of life at best and killing us at worst. In the meantime, the outcomes can also be devastating for the people around us that we care for and want to protect the most. On February 14th, 2018, in Parkland, Florida, an all too familiar tragedy unfolded at Marjorie Stoneman High School. Like Sandy Hook before, and most recently Uvalde, they are impossible to make sense of and shook me to my core as a father. My daughter was in 1st grade, and in the days after Parkland, came home anxious about being taught how to hide quietly on top of a toilet seat in the bathroom. While I certainly appreciate readiness in the face of the unthinkable,
couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. Common sense gun control measures certainly make sense, but that didn't feel like my cause for a few reasons. Certainly the inertia due to a frustrating mix of special interest and political polarization, but more importantly, it felt like there was something else driving this violence. I couldn't help but notice that one thing in common with these events is that many of them involved angry young men. In addition to the national tragedies, I had to weather some personal grief. 2 years before Parkland, when my best friend's infant son, Adam, unexpectedly passed away. Prior to this, I was confident that I knew exactly what it meant to be a man. A man didn't cry, was stoic, and always in control. Until he wasn't. Because I had been so certain and committed to being what I thought a man was, I was completely and hopelessly unprepared to deal with the fallout of personal tragedy. Which brings me back to how traditional masculinity has reduced us to one-dimensional characters in our own stories. I began to volunteer with Resilience to help out not only other men discover that there is more out there for us, but also as a journey of discovery for myself in healthy manhood. When I talk with men and boys, they inherently understand that if we adhere to the traditional explanation of what it means to be a man, it is acceptable to have exactly two emotions. Every man or boy can name these two, and I encourage you to test it. Anger or nothing will be the consistent answers in one form or another. Once it was put in those terms for me, it made the violence that we see and experience every day in this country almost inevitable. Women, of course, have known about this for generations and have linked this violence against ourselves to the domestic violence that exists in all of our communities. But the insidious nature of masculinity as we know it today doesn't allow for us to accept help or have an open dialogue because we always need to be in control. I don't want the world to be this way. I want my kids to go to school without having to worry about their foot slipping into a toilet while they are huddled in the stall for practice. God forbid if they ever actually have to hide in a real active shooter situation. I don't want my son to feel as angry as I did when I was a young man and make poor choices to dull the pain with drugs and alcohol because I lack the emotional capacity to handle the challenges of life in a healthy way. I do not have all the answers, but I'm interested in looking for them. Women have been discussing feminism in an organized manner for almost 175 years, and yet I've never heard anyone mention masculism. As men, we can choose, we can accept what we are told to be, or we can be the stars of our own stories. I, for one, know what I choose. I would love for you to join me in this journey. I offer grace and understanding as we evolve. Come as you are, and be prepared to leave as a part of something greater.